Last year, I spent more than $28,000 to run my business, and around $2,000 of that on AI tools. Since then, I only added more because I love tools that make my life easier. And in this video, I go over every single one of them and share with you why I think that you should start using them too. First up on the list is Wispr Flow. This is my new favorite app that I started recommending to everyone. It's basically a dictation tool, but way better than any other built-in solution. Wispr plugs into any tool on your laptop where you can use text. I simply click into somewhere and then I start pressing the hotkey and I can start dictating. So for example, Wispr is a really cool tool and makes writing so much easier. I'm much faster if I speak out my thoughts, right, and have that tool transcribe it than if I were to type all these things myself. Now, once it's done, right, I just leave the hotkey and then it starts transcribing it. As you can see, I've been using Wispr for a little more over 4 months and I couldn't imagine working without it anymore. I use it all the time, and funnily enough, it makes your other AI tools better. Because as you know, with AI, context is king. But sometimes we're just lazy, right? You don't want to type all these basic instructions all the time in the tool, but it's much more natural to just speak them in, right? It also lends itself well to this instruction-heavy kind of prompting that you need if you want to get really, really good results. So by using Wispr, right, you're knocking out two things at once. First, you have an awesome tool that makes it much, much easier to, get long texts down. And on the other hand, your other AI tools will improve because you're more likely to give them proper context information. And of course, you can find the links to this and all of the other tools down below in the description. Now, on to tool number 2, which is Circleback. Honestly, if you don't have an AI note taker yet and you're in any kind of regular meetings, drop everything else, make sure you get that one. It took me a while to get used to them, but now I really wouldn't want to imagine having meetings and writing down things on my own anymore. Now, there are a ton of note takers out there and it can get a little bit confusing choosing the right one. So here are my recommendations. First, if you use Notion and have access to Notion AI, which we'll talk about in a second, then just start using their built-in tool. Right? It's not the best one, but it's really, really solid and will give you an idea of all the cool things that you can do. Plus, it's included for free, so great starting point. Otherwise, if you're alone and just want to dabble with a note taker, then check out Fathom. Fathom is great because on the individual plan, right, it's free. So it's one of the easiest ways to get into a proper note taker without, the upfront investment. Or if you're serious about this and want to make sure you have the best possible tool that also integrates with all the other tools in your workspace, then I would recommend Circleback. It's one that I personally use. It works amazingly well with the different integrations. It also has a mobile app that you can use to record in-person meetings. So overall, just a great pick, even though it's a little bit pricey. Number 3 is Loom AI. If you ever work with me and my team, then you'll definitely get to know Loom. I couldn't actually work without it, right? These mini videos that you can quickly record to show something from your screen or just share any thoughts save so much time, and they are so much better at communicating context compared to, just writing an email. Plus, you avoid a bunch of meeting back and forths. And the base tool is already great, but if you add their AI solution into mix, it gets a whole lot better. It's a bit hard to describe what makes Loom AI so great, so I would recommend you just go ahead and try it out. But in an attempt, let's talk about a few things. It starts with very small things that add up, like automatically titling all your loops and creating summaries and timestamps, which makes it much easier for someone who receives this, right, to make sense of what they're about to see. But then you can also take things one step further. We all know, right, that creating documentation sucks. It's really annoying. But thanks to Loom AI, you can now simply do a task, right, and talk your way through it, explain what you do as if you would explain it to a coworker. And then afterwards, you can go in and you can tell Loom, well, please take this, right, and create something, right? Create a document, create a message of this. So you can ask it to create a document and say, okay, this should be an SOP. And now with just a few clicks, right, you're making sure that your structure here turns into proper documentation. You can simply copy into your tool, for example, Notion, right, or copy it together with the Loom. You get even like some snapshots now that explain, right, if this was not just a walkthrough, but like a more detailed explanation of what you're about to see. And that is, yeah, it's such a time saver and really can help your team start from, okay, we don't have anything documented to, we have sort of minimum viable documentation about our processes. Number 4 is definitely for fun, and it's Cursor. Now, hear me out on this one. I think that even if you have no idea of programming and never thought about building anything, using code before, I think that you should download Cursor and give it a spin. I have no formal training in programming, right? I'm a lawyer in theory, that's my education background. But still, with the help of AI and tools like Cursor, I was able to create some first mini tools. And it's such a great shift, right, in terms of what you think you're capable of when you see that you can just create these things yourself. For example, right, for this new website of mine, right, I created a Notion ROI calculator where you can put in, your company, so MF Consulting, right, you can tell it how many employees you have, and we'll tell you, okay, based on, what you typically see with a project, what is your ROI, right, how much money could you save? Or you have a contract generator if you do any work as a Notion consultant or with other Notion consultants and you need a quick contract that you have there. And you have even a QR code generator, right? For years, I was always struggling to get nice looking QR codes for all my meetings. There was all these weird websites that have to sometimes log in. Also here, you can just put in whatever you want, right? It's free, you can download it, and it's so cool. And that gets unlocked, right, the second you start playing around with AI coding tools like Cursor. Now, vibe coding is of course also a learning curve, right? You will not be able to do everything you want in the beginning, but you can start with something very simple, right? For example, a Pomodoro timer or any other mini idea that you have and see what it spits out and then slowly but steadily get better at it. So I would say Cursor, definitely something to add to your list. Number 5, of course, has to be Notion AI. Notion AI has come a long way from its humble beginnings. So much, in fact, that's now, the central focal point of the Notion website. At this point, I would say if you use Notion with a team, right, or with your company, your default should be that yes, you should be using Notion AI. The Notion business plan is probably the best value for money deal that you can currently get. I'll be recording a detailed guide on Notion AI and the best use case to get started with it soon, but in the meantime, you can already find the information on my website on this mega guide about everything around Notion AI. I'll link to that down below in the description. Number 6 is the classic ChatGPT Plus. Now, we can't really talk about AI tools, right, without mentioning the OG ChatGPT. I assume at this point you're familiar with that, right, and you know that it's an absolutely amazing tool. If not, and you would like to see a list of my personal use case for it all the time, then let me know down below in the comments and I add this to list. But in the meantime, just one quick shout out, and that is that the image generation with ChatGPT has gotten much, much better. Thanks to Sora, right, with dedicated image module from OpenAI. It's gotten so good that I actually canceled my Midjourney subscription. That used to be another tool that I pay for, but now you can do so many things. You can either access it directly through the ChatGPT interface, but I would recommend that you actually go to sora.chatgpt, because here you have a lot more options about the things that you can do with it, right? You have more granularity in your controls, and it's just an overall better experience. And yeah, play around with it, absolutely amazing. You can also now generate text much better than before, right? Whole comic strips. So really cool tool to play around with. Another feature that you might not have seen yet in ChatGPT is deep research, which is now also available on the regular paid plan. Previously, it was limited to the Pro one, right? The one that costs $200 a month. Now you can also get it for the $20 a month plan. And basically what it does is if you give it a task, right, a research task, and will go off and search for, anything between 2 minutes and 15 or 20 minutes to create an answer. And it's a lot more thorough, right, than the usual web research. For example, recently I gave a talk for the community from Thiago Forte, right, the Building a Second Brain community, about organizational knowledge management. I wanted some stories to help supplement the lessons. So instead of, looking for them and trying to find the ones, when usually also you always find, right, the same kind, right, if you just type it into Google, I asked ChatGPT to research it and came up with a lot of amazing stories and a ton of amazing sources, right, that I could check for additional information on them. It was insanely helpful, right, both for the presentation and to create this article. If you want to check out the result of it, right, you can go down to the link in the description below and see for yourself of how the 4 horsemen of knowledge management, right, keep people and the organizations from creating better processes and organization there. Number 7, and for good measures, Claude. You might be a bit surprised to see both ChatGPT and Claude on this list, because they are both fairly similar, right? They both fulfill this role of a chatbot, an AI chatbot, one of the leading underlying LLMs, but I think both of them have their different use cases. In general, I prefer ChatGPT when it comes to analytical skills, right, and research, and I prefer Claude for creative things, right, when it helps me with writing or tries to correct things as an editor. And in the few days since I filmed this video initially, it actually became a lot more relevant, because Claude can actually directly integrate now with Notion and actually do actions in Notion. So, well, here's what I mean, right? Here I'm in a Claude chat and I can now ask it to, can you retrieve my tasks for Monday, 2nd June? And now Claude will go ahead and will go into my workspace and will query the database and figure out the things that I have to do. And not just that, right? It can take pretty much any action in Notion that you could take. So after it does it, right, I could ask it to plan my week. And I could ask it to, take a look at the priorities that I've set and, based on those, figure out when I should do certain things. And I could even then go ahead and tell it, well, actually, I did these few things and you can check them off. Which means the last kind of missing puzzle piece, right, with AI, the one where it can only tell you information, but it can't really take actions, that's gone now, right? It can do all these things for you. Now, it's a little bit involved to set it up. Actually, it's not, right? It just takes 5 minutes, but it would go beyond the purpose of this video, right, where I want to just go quickly through apps. So if you want to learn how to set this up, without any coding knowledge and fairly quickly, then check out the link for that in the description. It's super cool, and it's my favorite new AI use case that I've seen in the past few weeks. And number 8, Relay.app. Relay is probably the easiest way for you right now to start creating AI automations. And with AI automations, I mean anything that works while you don't really interact with it, right? With a normal chatbot, right, with ChatGPT or so, you have to sit in front of it, you have to ask it questions, please do this, please do that. But with automations, you set them up once and then they run in the background for you. If you're not quite sure where to get started with this, I just recently released a guest blog post together with Relay on 5 of my favorite use cases for business automations in combination of Notion and Relay. But even if you don't use Notion, right, or you want to look at other things, they have a ton of templates that you can just import with one click, right, to see, okay, how does it work if I start adding a little bit of AI magic into my workflows. Relay is now my go-to recommendation for people who want to get into automations for the first time, because it's very easy to get started. The learning curve is much lower compared to the other two tools on the blog, right? Make.com and N8N. That would be the more advanced options. Plus, you have a really generous free tier, right? Including AI credits. So you don't need to set up your own API keys with, OpenAI, Anthropic, and so on, and can just start building right away. So much for the AI tools that I currently use to run my business. And now I'd love to hear from you. Did I miss anything? What else should I add to the mix? Let me know down below. And now, if you're all excited to start jumping into AI automations and see what all the hype is about, well, here's a fun one for you. It's a simple flow that will teach you how to create automated meeting briefings, so that before every call that you jump on, you know exactly who you're about to speak with. Now, just click here and I will see you in a few seconds.